we've done a different pre-trip before your class, and now with this class, there's some added things. So hopefully, the newness of the additions I remember and I include. All right. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do my pre-trip. So first thing I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to come up. Make sure, look at my door, and make sure that my door opens up and closes freely. No damage to the seals. The glass is in good condition. My handrails are mounted securely and they're not damaged. Then I'm going to do my 3 points contact to get inside the bus. Taking a look at my floor, making sure that my floor doesn't have any tripping hazard or anything that like loose fibers that could cause a worn floor or any kind of tripping hazard. Okay? Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to perform my safe start. Okay, so in order for me to do that, I want to check my seatbelt first. I want to make sure that my seatbelt is not cut or frayed or has any loose fibers and is in good condition, along with the buckle. Okay, take more of my seatbelt in good condition. All right, next thing I want to do is make sure my bus is secure. All right, so when I start my bus, I'm going to look for 2 lights that need to come on and then go off. One of them is my ABS light and then my DEF light. Okay, they need to come on and go off. If they stay on, then that would indicate that there's a malfunction in one of those systems. Okay, so I'm going to cover my brake. Okay, I'm going to turn my bus to night run. I'm going to look at my dash. There's my ABS light. Went off. Here's my DEF light. Stayed on and went off. Okay, so both of those went on and went off, so there's no malfunction with those systems. Now I'm going to go ahead and start the bus. Okay, so I'm going to have to close the door for some of the...
if some of you guys want to get inside so you can hear,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah, let me...
Get behind the
Okay, come on in. I'll just walk around you when I got to go inside. Coming in, Logan?
Sure, I'll come in.
Okay, all right, so the first part of my pre-trip is going to be my air system brake check. Okay, the first test I'm going to do is I'm going to test my low air warning devices. I have 2. I have an audible and a visual. They need to come on between 55 and 75, but no lower than 55 psi. Okay. Okay, they came on at 70 psi. Okay, that's within the parameters of the required criteria. Okay, so now I'm going to wait for my cutout to get set up for my next test. Okay, while my test is coming, I'm going to make sure I got my horn. Okay, did all of that. And I'm waiting for a full tank because my next test is going to be an air leakage or, air loss test. Okay, to make sure that I don't have a leak within my system. Okay, so I'm waiting for a full tank of air. Okay, my needles have stopped rising. The primary needle, the top needle, white, that's the one I'm testing on, okay, is approximately 130. So I'm going to go ahead and set up for my air leakage test. I'm going to cover my brake, release the parking brake. Shut off the bus. Gonna go back to night run. Wait for my needles to settle. Okay, my needles have settled at 120, and I'm gonna start my minute now. And during this minute, I'm also listening for air leaks. Can't lose more than 3 psi in this minute. Okay. Okay, my minute is up. I'm still at 120. I didn't hear any air leaks and I didn't lose any PSI within that minute. Okay, my last test is going to be my spring brake test. Okay, my spring brake parking brake needs to engage between 20 and 45 PSI or at a level specified by the manufacturer. Okay, my spring brake engaged at 45 PSI. That's a good test. Now I'm going to go ahead and fire up my bus. Okay, so that concludes my air brake test. So now the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to do a parking brake test. Okay, so I'm going to have the bus move forward. I'm going to apply the brake to see if the bus holds. Then I'm going to do the service brake, but for the distance, I'm going to explain to the examiner what I'm looking for when I test the service brake. Okay? All right, so I'm going to brake, put it in drive. I'm going to go forward. Okay, parking brake is in good condition. Okay, then for my service brake, okay, I would go ahead, if I had the room, I would go ahead about 5 miles an hour, okay, apply the service brake, and I'm looking to see if the bus pulls to the left or to the right. If it doesn't, my service brake system is good. Okay? All right, now I want to check all my indicator lights in here that I see. So I'm going to go ahead and check my left turn signal. I'm going to check my right turn signal. I'm going to check my four ways. Okay. Then I want to make sure that I check my high beams. High beams are on, high beams are off. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go and I got to check a couple of gauges here. So the first one I'm going to look at, okay, I got my 6 and 12 voltmeter gauges here, and there's no warning lights on, and they're showing that both systems have the proper charge. All right. Next thing I'm looking, I see my DEF tank, okay, where I need more than 1/8 of an inch of fluid in my DEF tank. The gauge shows that I have more than that. Now I'm going to go to the auxiliary menu, okay, to see my temperature gauge. Okay, it's hard with the glare here. So I'm looking, I got my coolant level. Okay, my coolant level is where it should be. I have my water temperature, it's all working, and my oil pressure gauge. So they're all working in normal operating range. There's no warning lights. Okay, all the systems are working. I'm going to go back to the main menu. Make sure that system works. Okay, and the temperature dials work. So I'm going to go ahead and check my defroster. My defroster is in good condition. Okay, my temperature is working, and then I'm going to go check my wipers. I'm going to make sure that my wipers work, and then my washer fluid. Okay. All right, very good. Next, I'm looking at my windshield, okay, and my mirror, including the inside mirror. Okay, so when I'm looking at my windshield, I'm making sure that there's no cracks or chips or any illegal welds, and that the windshield is clean. I'm looking at my mirrors, the flat and convex, make sure that they're not damaged, they're mounted securely, they're clean, they're not broken, and they're adjusted to me. Both of my mirrors, passenger and side, they're all in good condition, and they're adjusted to me. Okay. All right, so then the next thing I need is if you can assist me, okay, in my exterior lights. Go in the back. Okay, this is okay, so I'm going to go talk about some items on the inside. Okay, so now I'm going to get out of the seat. Okay, I'm going to go ahead at this point now, and I'm going to go ahead and shut the engine off. Okay, I think I covered everything here. Yeah. All right. Okay, so the wheelchair lift is also something I would inspect. Is that something you want me to deploy or operate?
Okay, you tell me what you check on the wheelchair lift?
Sure. So when I operate the wheelchair lift, I want to make sure that there's no damage, that there's no leaks, that it fully deploys where it needs to be and fully stows when I'm finished with it, with no issues, no leaks, or there's no damage to the lift at all. Okay. All right, so with the entrance as well, I'm also checking my entrance lights, making sure that they're working and that they're mounted securely and not damaged. So as I come into before I go into the floor, I want to make sure that I check my circuit breakers. This bus doesn't have any fuses, but if any of the circuit breakers within the system trip, they're located up here. Okay, and then I want to make sure that my fire extinguisher, okay, is showing that it's fully charged, okay, and that it's mounted securely and that there's no damage. Then I'm going to make sure that in the red box that I have all three of my emergency triangles. Okay, that's my FET. All right. So next I'm going to go, as I come into the bus, I'm going to be checking my floor. I want to make sure that my floor doesn't show any cracks or any holes that would indicate that I have a damaged frame, right? I'm coming through here. Then I'm going to check my seating. All right, I want to make sure that my seats are mounted securely to the floor and that the seat frames and cushions are not damaged and they're mounted securely. Okay, next I'm going to check my emergency exits. All right, I'm going to come back here. My roof hatch here is an emergency exit. Okay, make sure that if I needed to, I can get out of here in an emergency through the roof. And then all my windows with red handles are also emergency exits. Okay, including my front door. Okay, if I needed to use the front door, there's a little hammer that I would use to break the glass and then use the lever there to open up the front door. And then this is my emergency exit. So let me go ahead and demonstrate one for you. I can do this one here. Okay, this one over here. Sorry, guys.
No, it's all right.
All right, so I'm going to demonstrate an emergency exit. Right, pull down on the red handle, open it up, swing it out, and there you go. That's my emergency exit. Okay? Okay, I think that takes care of the inside. So let's go ahead and make our way outside. 3 points contact. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the front of the bus.
Wait,
oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, everybody's out?
You mentioned the trash can as well being secured.
There's nothing different. Okay, so now I'm going to check the front of my bus. Okay, I'm going to make sure that all my clearance lights, the lenses are present, they're not missing, they're not damaged, and they're the proper color. Amber in the front, red elsewhere. Okay, coming down, now I'm going to check the outside of my windshield. Make sure the windshield doesn't have any cracks, chips, that it's clean and there's no illegal stickers. Then I'm also going to check my wiper. I want to make sure that my wiper arms have proper tension, that each wiper blade is in good condition and they're mounted securely and not damaged. Okay, coming over here, making sure that I'm checking my mirror. Okay, my mirror arm, okay, make sure my mirror is in good condition. The outside housing, the turn signal on here is the proper color, it's not broken, and it's mounted securely. Okay, with my convex mirror, checking also my reflectors. Okay, make sure that my reflectors are mounted securely, that they're not missing and they're not broken. Turn signal lens, want to make sure that it's mounted securely, that it's not damaged, okay, and that it's not missing. Headlight lenses, want to make sure that the lenses are mounted securely, that they're not damaged, and they're clean. Come over here, same thing, and check my headlight lenses, make sure that they're not they're mounted securely, that they're not damaged, and they're clean. Turn signal lens, proper color, amber where it needs to be. I've got another reflector here. Want to make sure that that's proper color, not damaged, and it's mounted securely. I'm going to check my passenger mirror. Make sure that the mirror housing is in good condition. No issues with my mirror arm. That both the driver's side and the passenger side mirror, the glass is in good condition. It's clean, mounted securely, and not broken. Okay. I also want to make sure within the inside, okay, along the outside, I also check my camera. I want to make sure that my cameras are in good condition, that they're mounted securely, and that they're not damaged. All of my cameras, right? Okay, coming over here now. All right, we're going to talk about our steering box. Okay, so my steering box. Okay, I want to make sure that my steering box is mounted securely, that the box is not damaged, and that it's not leaking. Okay, then all my connecting links, arms, and rods from the box to the steering wheel, okay, are not damaged or cracked. Okay, and that the power steering hoses going to the box, okay, that provides power steering fluid are not cut, cracked, or frayed, not damaged, mounted securely, and not leaking. Okay, then I want to talk about my my joints and sockets. Okay, I want to make sure that they're not damaged. Okay, that it's not missing any bolts or any cotter pins on my connecting joints. Okay, and sockets. Next, I'm going to go to my wheel. Okay, I'm going to start off with my wheel. Okay, I'm going to look at my splash guard and my mud flap to make sure that they're mounted securely. Okay, that they're not damaged. Okay, then I'm going to come to ICD, my inflation for my tire. Okay, I'm going to locate my valve stem. Okay, and my valve stem is down here. Okay, make sure that my valve stem is mounted securely, that it's not damaged, it has the proper cap. Okay, to check my inflation. If I was to check my inflation, I would check it with the tire gauge through my valve stem. Okay, then I would check the condition of my tire. Make sure that the sidewall, there's no, not excessively worn, that there's no cracks or chunks out of my sidewall, and that the tire is evenly worn. Okay, then I would check the tread depth. Okay, the depth of the tread. All right, I would make sure that the tread depth is no less than 4/32 of an inch. I would check that with the tread depth gauge. Okay, that's my wheel. Next, we're going to go into the brakes. Okay, so next I'm going to check. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we're moving on. The rim. I got ahead of myself. I'm going to check the rim. Okay, I want to make sure that the rim shows no illegal weld, that the rim is not dented, and there's no sign of any rust trail. Then I'm going to check and make sure all my lug nuts are present, mounted securely, and I don't see any rust trails from the lug nut that would indicate a loose wheel. Then I'm going to go into my hub oil seal. Make sure that it's mounted securely, that it's not damaged, and there's no signs of any leaks from my hub oil seal. Okay, that's my wheel. All right, now I'm going to go into my brakes. So I'm going to go over here and check my brake rotor. I want to make sure that my brake rotor has no cracks or holes and that it's mounted securely. And then I'm going to go to my brake pads. I want to make sure that my pads are mounted securely, that they're not worn excessively thin, and that they're free of any contaminants such as grease or oil. Okay, and then the slack adjuster and push rod. So this coach doesn't have a slack adjuster or a push rod. It's designed inside my brake caliper, but if it had it, what I would check is I would make sure that the push rod and slack adjuster aren't bent or damaged and they're mounted securely. And then I would make sure that my push rod has no more than 1 inch play when the brakes are released. Okay, that's my brakes. Then I would go into my suspension. I would make sure that my airbag, okay, is mounted securely, that there's no damage or any cuts or cracks in my airbag and no leaks, which is mounted to the air mount, which is mounted to the bus. I would make sure that my air mount has no missing bolts and it's mounted securely. Okay, then I would go to my shock absorber. I would make sure that my shock absorber is mounted securely, okay, that it's not damaged and it shows no signs of any leaks. Okay, then I would check my torque arm, make sure that my torque arm is mounted securely and not damaged. Going into U-bolts. This bus doesn't have U-bolts, but if it had U-bolts, I would make sure that they're not damaged and they're not missing any nuts or any other bolts to the U-bolt. Okay, and that's my suspension. All right, I did the wheel, brakes, and the suspension. Okay, going over here, now I'm checking my turn signal, making sure that the lens is in good condition, that it's mounted securely and not damaged. All right, coming through, making sure everything here. At this point, I'm going to check my frame. I want to make sure that the frame of the bus, okay, where it doesn't sit cockeyed, that would indicate a problem with my cross members, okay, or any damage to my frame itself. Okay, along with checking my drive shaft. Okay, I want to make sure that the U-joints and the drive shaft are in good condition, that there's no damage to the U-joint and they're mounted securely, and that there's no excess debris wrapped around my drive shaft, making sure that it's not twisted or bent on my drive shaft. Okay? All right, coming through, looking at my reflectors, making sure that they're mounted securely, that they're the proper color, that they're amber, okay, and they're not damaged. All right, coming over here, this is my regular fuel slip. going to check the door for one, make sure that the door is in good condition, and then I'm going to take a look at my fuel tank cap. I want to make sure that my fuel tank cap is sealed properly, that the cap is not damaged, and that I don't see any leaks. Along with the tank itself, that the tank is mounted securely, that there's no damage to the tank, and I don't see any kind of fluke. Okay, again, another turn signal coming through. Okay, make sure that it's mounted securely, that there's no damage, and both of these are in proper color. Okay, so welcome to my rear axle. Okay, now I'm going to start from the outside. I'm going to check my splash guard and my mud flap, make sure that they're mounted securely, that there's no damage to my splash guard and mud flap, and they're in good condition. Okay, next I'm going to check the inflation. Okay, check out 2 tires. I got 2 tires that I would check. Okay, so here's my valve stem. Okay, for inflation, make sure that my valve stem is mounted securely, that there's no damage to the valve stem, and I would check the tires for proper inflation with the tire dealer. Okay, next I would go into the rim. I would make sure that both rims are not dented, not damaged, no signs of any leaks, and no signs of any kind of illegal welds on my rims. Okay, then I would go into my lug nuts, making sure that all my lug nuts are present, okay, that they're not damaged, mounted securely, and I don't see any rust trails from any of the lug nuts, which would indicate a loose lug nut. Then I'm going to go to my axle seal. Okay, make sure that all the bolts are present, that the axle seal is mounted securely, okay, and that I don't see any leaks from my axle seal. Okay, that's my wheel. Okay, next I'm going to go to my brakes. Okay, so I'm going to check my brake rotor, make sure that my brake rotor has no sign, it's mounted securely, has no signs of any cracks or holes in my rotor, followed by checking my brake pads. I want to make sure that my brake pads are in good condition, that they're not worn excessively thin, and that there's no contaminants such as grease or oil on my brake pad. Okay? Next, I'm going to check my slack adjuster and push rod. On this coach, it doesn't have those. It's located within the caliper itself. So if it had a slack adjuster and push rod, I would make sure that both the slack adjuster and the push rod aren't bent or broken or damaged, and it's mounted securely. Then I would make sure that my push rod, okay, has no more than 1 inch play when the brakes are released. Okay, that's my brakes. All right. One thing I forgot to mention up front, okay, which I'll include here with the brakes, is the brake hoses. Okay, I want to make sure that the brake hoses, they're not cut, cracked, or frayed. Okay, they're mounted securely, and that the brake hoses are not leaking. Okay. All right. Next, I'm going to go into my suspension. Okay. So first thing I'm going to check is my airbag, which is connected to the air mount. So my airbag is in good condition, that the airbag is mounted securely, not damaged, and it doesn't have any cracks or cuts, and it's not leaking. The air mount itself is mounted securely to the bus. It's not damaged, and that it's not missing any bolts to the air mount. Okay. Then I would check my shock absorber and make sure that my shock absorber is mounted securely. Okay, making sure that there's no damage to my shock absorber and that the shock absorber is not leaking. All right. Next thing I would check is my torque arm to make sure that my torque arm is mounted securely and not damaged. Followed by the U-bolts. This bus doesn't have any U-bolts, but if it had U-bolts, I would make sure that they're not damaged, that they're mounted securely, and they're not missing any nuts. Okay, to my U-bolts. All right. Okay. Coming down here, gonna come over here, checking, this is my DEF fluid, diesel exhaust fluid tank, okay, which is what I mentioned in the inside for my gauge, okay. I would make sure that the DEF tank cap is tight, okay, that it's not damaged, it's mounted securely, okay, and that it's not leaking. Then I would make sure that the tank itself, along with the gauge, shows that I have more than 1/8 of an inch of DEF fluid in my tank. Then I make sure that the tank is not damaged and I see no leaks from my DEF tank. Okay? Okay, coming through, checking reflectors. Okay, make sure they're mounted securely. Okay, that they're not damaged, both top and bottom here, and that they're proper color. Everywhere else is amber. These are in the rear, and they should be red, which they are. Good condition. All right, so through here, okay, I have my power steering reservoir tank, okay, that supplies my power steering fluid. So this tank, I want to make sure that it's mounted securely, that the tank is not damaged, and it has a sight glass to show me the fluid level. I want to make sure that the fluid level is where it needs to be, and the hoses that come from the tank that go to my pump, and then from the pump up to the steering box, there's no cuts, cracks, or frays, and that the steering tank hoses and so forth are not damaged or leaking. Okay, it's my power steering. All right, coming through, I'm going to start from the top. I need to take a look at my exhaust. Okay, I want to make sure that my exhaust is mounted securely. Okay, that it shows no signs of any damage or any kind of rust or any black soot in my exhaust system. Okay, followed by all of my clearance, making sure that they're mounted securely. Okay, they are working, and that all the lenses are not broken and present. Okay, all of my clearance stuff. Coming down, checking all my lenses, making sure that my lenses are mounted securely, that they're not damaged. Checking all of these here. Again, looking at my reflectors on both sides. Okay, making sure they're mounted securely and that they're not damaged and they are the proper color. Okay, followed by checking my engine compartment door. Okay, I want to make sure that my engine compartment door opens and closes properly, that the door itself is not damaged. Okay, the shocks here, making sure that they're in good condition, they're not damaged, mounted securely, and I don't see any leaks on my engine compartment door shocks. Okay? Alright, so we'll keep this closed, right, Manny? Manny, we'll keep this closed. Hold on, you got the key. All right, so now I'm going to check my engine component. Okay? So the first component I'm going to check is my alternator. This bus is a hybrid bus, so it doesn't have an alternator. But the alternator charging system is part up above in the hybrid system itself. Okay, so I would make sure I check that. Next, I'm going to check over here my coolant level. Okay, so this is my coolant tank. I would make sure that through this sight glass that I got the proper level of coolant. If I had to add coolant, I would simply add it here. Okay. Next, I would check to make sure that I have the proper level of my engine oil. Okay, my dipstick here, I would pull out my dipstick, make sure that it's clean, put it back in, pull it out, and make sure that I have the proper operating oil level. If I had to add oil, if it was low, I would add it right here. This is where I would add my oil. Okay. All right, next, I'm going to check, I mentioned the alternator. Okay, next I'm going to check, okay, coming over here, I'm going to make sure I check my water pump. Okay, my water pump is belt driven. Okay, I would make sure that the water pump is mounted securely, that there's no damage to the water pump, and I don't see any leaks from the water pump. Okay, followed by, because it's belt driven, I would check my belt. I would make sure that my belt is in good condition, that there's no cuts, cracks, or frays from my belt, and that there's no more than 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch deflection or play, which would indicate a loose belt. Okay. Next, over here, I would check in there that my power steering pump, I would make sure that the power steering pump, which is gear driven, okay, is mounted securely, no damage to the pump. Okay, and that the hoses from the pump to the steering system, there's no cuts, cracks, or frays, and that I don't see any leaks from my power steering pump. Okay, followed by my air compressor, which is also gear driven. Okay, I would make sure that my air compressor is mounted securely. I want to make sure that there's no damage to the air compressor, and I don't hear any air leaks coming from my air compressor. Okay. And then one thing I want to mention too, if I didn't any up front, you know, with my gauges, my air gauge showed that it showed a proper cutout, so my air gauge is working as well. I knew I forgot that. Okay, all right, so that's my components. Okay, make sure they're all in good condition. All right. So one thing I want to talk about too over here and around the whole bus are baggage compartments. Okay, so this bus doesn't have any baggage compartments, but if it did, I would make sure that the compartment doors themselves were mounted securely, that there was no damage to the baggage compartment door. Okay, all around if it has the baggage compartment. Okay. Then finally, I want to check to make sure that I look at all my hoses. Okay, I want to make sure that all my hoses are mounted securely, that there's no damage to any of my hoses, okay, not missing any parts, and that I don't see any leaks at all coming from any of my hoses through the engine compartment. Okay? All right, I think going off of that, I think I did. I think I covered it all. Let's see, let me just kind of review. I think that's it. I probably failed.
No, you didn't fail, but you missed few, okay?
I missed a few.
So somebody tell me what he missed.
What did I miss? Probably.
The thread in the back of the tire,
Oh, the
and then the cap between two
So
tires.
he talked about
And
the
the
inflation.
spacer.
He talked about the inflation, and from there he moved. He didn't talk about the tread, right?
thread and the space between two tires.
And he didn't talk about the spacers. You can see over here. I marked a tire. He talked about the inflation, but he didn't finish it.
Good. Good.
So spacers. He didn't talk about the spacers on the
In
back.
between the two tires.
Do you hear brake chambers?
No, I didn't do brake chambers. Right. Right.
No, right?
No.
No, I
Okay.
didn't do the brake chambers.
So brake chambers, right? So then when he started at the beginning, when he started the bus, he forgot to talk about the safe start, the parking brake on and the gear selector.
Oh, no, I mentioned it.
You did?
He did say
Then I
the
missed
gear
it.
selector was in neutral.
He said, then I missed it. Okay, I missed it completely, so I didn't hear that part. Okay, so that's it. So he did pretty good.
He passed?
He passed it. Yeah, definitely he passed it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm not perfect, so you know.
Your
it's
license
not-
has been renewed.
Yeah, it's not something where you can tell there's a lot of information. But what did you notice? I took my time. Okay, there's some things as you go along that remind you, like the baggage compartment. I totally spaced on.
Mm-hmm.
But I remembered as I was doing this, I went, oh yeah, okay, and then I went back. Brake chambers, I don't know why I missed that.
I know why.
I was focused more on not forgetting the added part is the slack adjustable pusher. I know I nailed that.
So look, it's not that I want to give you an excuse. So there are stuff that we didn't have to check
Yeah.
until today.
Yeah.
Brake chamber, spacers is other items that they were removed, but now that we become ETP certified,
Yeah.
they put it back on.
They put it back
That's why Kevin forgot those things, and I'm surprised that he remembered like baggage compartment. He went and back and do it. A lot of the stuff over here, it wasn't in our list. It was removed. He did really good to my point of view.
Yeah, I
So-
know. There's also additional items that we added to the suspension. I never had to talk about U-bars. Never had to talk about toll tires. I brought those back. You heard me talk about those.
Drive
Always
shaft.
talked about the shock. You know, airbags, air mounts. Always talked about them.
Yeah.
But I know I was very thorough on, you know, the specifics with the steering box, right? So he showed you the steering box. You talk about that first, and then it has to connect to the wheel. So, you know, I did the initials LAR, connecting links, arms, and rods. Those go to the steering wheel. Make sure that they're not, and that's how I piece them, right? Then from there, you go to what connects from those down to the wheel, which are the joints and the sockets. Not missing any nuts, and then more importantly, no cotter pins, you know, those type of things. So when you study, I have a way of making notes of things that I know they need to hear, and then make it my own where I cover it all. So that's how it works for me.
So just to give you an idea, Kevin missed three items. As a last class, before they add up this other items, you could actually miss 8. So I don't know if they're gonna give a little bit more room or they're gonna keep it that way. But you can actually miss 8 for sure. I can guarantee you. Then you can still pass it. Okay?
I know you said like the brake pads are not thin. Is there a specific number that we have to know?
No.
Thin?
You're just looking. You saw the brake pad yesterday with Brian. That's a brand new pad. How thick? So if you were to inspect it, okay, there's the brake material, okay, the brake stopping material, and then the backing plate. So as the pad wears, it gets closer to the backing plate. So if you look, and it's real, the braking material is real close to the backing plate, then they're worn excessively thin. You don't have a lot of brake pads on it. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. On top of making sure there's no contaminants like grease or oil, okay, that kind of stuff. So what you saw yesterday was a brand new brake pad. The first part is the material that stops the bus, and they put that on a backing plate that gets mounted. And that's how these mechanics get a flashlight and they look in there and they can determine how thick the pad is. And they wear pretty much even there's an inside and an outside on that rotor and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that and there's sensors on these too. That I've never driven a bus here that the pads were ever in the vicinity of excessively thin. But DMV doesn't know that, so they generalize it because there's companies out there that their maintenance department isn't as good as ours. And so they let components like that go for whatever reason. So that's why they put that there.
So this is information that you guys you need to know the equipment, right? Our buses are inspected every day, and we report any unusual noise. And just like your vehicle, they have 5,000 miles, 10, 15, or either whatever it comes first, time or miles. So you don't have to worry about that. This is more information that you need to know related to what the DMV requires for you to operate the vehicle.
Right.
Okay?
And the items I showed that pointed out that this bus doesn't have, you heard me say that. But because it's an item I have to talk about, right? Because you won't get the point. Things like U-boat, which doesn't have it. But I had to talk about it, things like that. So it's those items you have to remember, even though this coach doesn't have it. We may someday get a bus that might have it.
So like with the suspension and the steering box, the airbags, although you can't see them, you still talk about it, like what you would do.
That was the idea of the pit tour.
Right.
Brian was down there trying to show you what the physical steering box looks like. Now it's your choice whether you want to talk about it, over here by the joint, because that's where it is. I just chose to talk about it over there by the tire. So that right front tire, that takes care of a lot of it. All of it, including the frame and the drive shaft. The drive shaft was the other addition that we have to talk about, along with the U-joints. Okay, that we never had to talk about that before. But that's all at that front wheel. Then once that's done, you make your way down to the tanks and stuff, all the reflectors, and then you get to the rear wheel, and it's different tread depth, which I forgot, and the extra tire and the spacer. It's basically the same thing. Remember, Brian said all of our buses, all 4 wheels are disc brakes. Right? So it's different sizes because they're rear and front, but it's basically the same thing. You're checking for excessively worn thin pads in the front and the rear, right? So it's kind of the same thing.
All right.
Question?
Does it matter which direction we go in around the bus?
Well, yeah. I mean, they prefer you to go on the passenger side, because you come out the front door, you lie there, and think,
You want to do passenger side. That's what you have your fuel tank, you have your DAF tank.
Right.
So we want you to do passenger
That
side.
side.
Okay?
That's the preferred side.
Yeah. Okay, guys, look. Marcito wants us back at 12. We have about 10 minutes to practice. We have 3 buses. Let's split in 3 groups. Get on the driver's seat. Start practicing the air brake.
Use the rear brake.
The other ones start going over the